just for attending the Medal of Honor OP. This is what you're going to get. This is our participation prize this time around. It's the Officer Exchange Program. It's another resource, and we'll get right in and take a look. The Officer Exchange Program costs 0 points, which makes it very interesting. And this is our reference card for rules on how to use it. Number 1, prior to building your fleet, you choose 2 different factions. You do not pay any faction penalty when assigning captains or admiral or crew upgrades of either of the chosen factions to ships in your fleet of the other faction. Very nice. In addition, when assigning a captain or admiral card to one of the chosen factions in your fleet of the opposite faction, the cost of that card is actually reduced by 1 to a minimum of 0. This applies to all of your captain and admiral cards. And on the back it explains how resources work, that you're limited to 1 per fleet, and how to spend the points. This one costs no points, so definitely interesting. Can save you a lot of points, doesn't cost you any. They give you this Officer Exchange Program card. It has all the various faction symbols, at least the current ones on there. And this is supposed to go next to your fleet, kind of similar to the one that came with the high-yield photon torpedoes. More or less so that people across the table can see that you have it, because this kind of blends in with your other cards. So it makes it a little more obvious. At least that's what I think they're going for with these. We tend to play a lot of faction pure games around here, so with using this would allow you to cross faction, at least in our rule sets. Even without it, the ability to cross faction without paying the penalty, in fact things are discounted, is really nice. Really lets you mix and match and make some interesting things. You are limited to only the 2 factions you choose, which does limit, but if you were to pick, say, Klingons and Federation, there's a lot of different things you can do there, or Federation and the Dominion. Gives you all sorts of combinations that you can do really sick things with. The ability to put admirals on opposing faction ships without paying that hefty penalty that they cost for having an admiral on a cross-faction ship is probably the best thing this has to offer. And the fact that it's free, it does take up your resource slot, which kind of sucks, but definitely has its uses. The scenario for this month's event pretty much came with this built in, which was kind of neat. So you got to test it out and see what it was like. So the scenario for this one is kind of interesting. It comes from the episode of Next Generation, where the prize ship from this comes from, where the Officer Exchange comes from. It's where Riker went on board a bird of prey as a first officer, and there was a bacterial infection that basically started eating the hull of the ship, and they started blaming the Federation. It's a good episode if you haven't seen it. Now, I haven't measured these out the way they're officially supposed to be. I just kind of threw them down. You can see they're not even perfectly lined up, but in the actual scenario, they are supposed to be exactly 4 inches apart, which is pretty much range 1, and 4 inches in from the edge both ways. The way it starts is you got 1 player starting here, 1 player starting here, and you're going to go through the middle. Every one of your ships is going to start with one of these bacteria tokens already on it. So at the beginning of each planning phase, you're going to roll a die for every one of these that is currently on your ship. For every hit or critical you roll, your ship takes 1 damage to the hull. Kind of bypasses your shields, which is really sad. If you roll 2 or more criticals, depending on how many of these you have and how many dice you're rolling, you take a critical to your hull. Now, no matter what you roll, you never take more than 1 damage, so it really depends on if you're getting a hit or a crit to your hull. But eventually it's going to eat through your ship. If you roll at least 1 battle stations on those die, you're going to add an extra token to your ship. So they start adding up quickly, and your ships kind of get torn to shreds in this one. Now, the only way to get rid of these is every ship gains an action ability that lets you do one of 2 things. Either you can remove automatically one of the tokens from a friendly ship or your own ship within range 1 at the cost of an auxiliary power token to your ship and the target ship. You can also target yourself with this ability, which only gives you 1. Or the second option is to roll 3 attack dice and for every hit or critical, you can remove a token from yourself or an allied ship within range 1. This way you don't get an auxiliary power token, however there's always the chance that you can roll a miss. So it's kind of a gamble. You either get the guaranteed at the cost of an auxiliary or the random roll with a possibility of removing up to 3 a turn. So the scenario gets really tricky when you start figuring in the rest of these. On top of the other crap I already talked about, if you're within range 1 of the edge of the board, you're going to get another token added to your ship. If you overlap or get it within range 1 of one of these tokens that are already on the board, that token gets added to your ship. The nice part is it gets removed from the playing field. If you end up within range 1 of another ship that has some on board, you add another one to your ship. So you can see how the number of tokens on your ship multiplies exponentially, making those die rolls go faster and making your ship's hull just whittle away quickly unless you're really working to get them away. Meanwhile, your opponent's shooting at you too. Another interesting thing of note is at any point during the scenario, if you are to add a token to your ship card but there's no tokens left in the pool of extra ones, then you immediately roll a die as if you were taking damage from one of them. So if there's a lot of ships out there and there's a lot of tokens in play that are on the ships, you start taking damage ridiculously fast. So it's almost a must-have for the scenario to bring things that can regenerate your hull back up. So you really have to decide whether you're going to spend your actions trying to remove tokens from your ship or your allied ships, or if you're going to try to fire at your opponent. The game basically comes down to who has ships surviving at the end of the game, or who ends up adding up the most fleet points. Now, one of the interesting things about this scenario is at the start of it, when you're getting ready to play, you basically get a free copy of the Officer Exchange program. It lets you swap around the upgrades of your captains, crew, and admirals however you want without having to pay the faction penalty, 1 per ship. That comes into play at the end of the game when you're totaling up the fleet points for the battle. You get a +5 fleet point bonus for every one of your ships that survives the battle and has a faction or a crew member on board of a different faction. You also gain 5 points for every captain, crew, or admiral who has been discarded to activate and use his ability throughout the game that was cross-faction on a ship. All in all, it's an interesting scenario. It's a really tough one. It's a lot of fun to play, though. We've played this on a bigger table with more tokens. We actually used 2 kits worth of the tokens to cover the larger table, and it really gets really harsh with the bacteria tokens everywhere. And the prize for winning Matter of Honor is a Klingon Bird of Prey. This time it's the IKS Pa. This is the Klingon ship that Riker was aboard. Comes with some cool upgrades, including Riker himself. So definitely worth taking a look at. Going to do a video for that one separately, so keep an eye out for that. And I will see you in the next video.